Hey folks, welcome to a very, very, very special edition of TOTAP. Absolutely delighted to say that we are joined by world famous football economist from the Price of Football podcast, Kieran Maguire. Kieran, thanks a million for coming on and joining us.
Thanks very much, Decky. I think world famous is pushing it a bit.
No. Definitely not. Definitely not. You underestimate your popularity. And I think, are you aware of how popular the podcast is and you personally are in this country and in footballing circles in this country?
It is a weird one. I have been phoned at home by prime ministers. I have been invited to a party by Gary Neville. I'm not sure he was serious about it. So yeah, it is strange. I feel very uncomfortable. Sometimes I'll be on a train chatting to my wife, and somebody will just go, "Are you the Price of Football guy?" Okay. Oh God, yeah. It's a great show to work on, and I'm very, very fortunate that I work with two very talented people. So Kevin's a stand-up comedian, so he makes me look 10 times better than I am because I'm a 63-year-old teetotal chartered accountant with an obsession with Marmite and cricket and computer games. And I know what you're thinking, guys. I bet he's never been on a second date. But I'm this sort of dweeby nerd who's somehow found himself in sort of the centre of this football finance nonsense when it started to get popular.
Yeah, and I mean, let's start there, because football finance was always something that fans never ever worried about. It was just simply the owners can spend the money, buy the players we need, win something. If we don't win something, we're not happy. If we win something, we're not happy because we didn't win everything. If we win everything, we're not happy because they're not buying good enough players to make sure we win everything next year. And now all of a sudden, it feels like at least 50% of football fans worldwide are also trainee economists or wannabe accountants, and you're to the forefront of that. I mean, was there a motivation to make this stuff more accessible to people?
I'm a teacher, and I think any form of engagement as a teacher you want to achieve, and all of my teaching life's been in Manchester and Liverpool, which are two, as you can imagine, two massive footballing cities. So I've always used football as a Trojan horse to teach traditional financial topics. So if we're talking about debt, I'll say, let's take a look at how much Manchester United owe in unpaid transfer fees, and I show them how to find information, and when they go, Jesus Christ, it's 330 million sterling. I go, I'm just wait till they tell me, Dad. And if you want to, and we had we had the takeover of Liverpool for 300 million sterling in 2009, but it's now worth 12 times that. So, okay, how do we value a football club? And I'm going to teach you traditional financial methods, but I stick the word Liverpool FC at the front of it, and everybody wants to know because they've now got something which they can tell their mates. So I've just been very, very lucky that first of all, it's something I'm passionate about, and I think as a teacher, if you are passionate, that comes across. And B, I'm a teacher at the University of Liverpool, and I work with super smart professors in the world of astrophysics and tropical medicine and engineering and architecture, and I'm street smart. I'm not as clever as them, but I'm more passionate than them, and I've got a subject which everybody it annoys the university that I've got more Twitter followers than my employer, and the university's been there for a lot longer than I have.
And I think, Kieran, to be honest, a lot of folks in Ireland can relate to you as well, because I think you've zoned in on that niche where, especially with football in Ireland and the scrutiny that League of Ireland fans put the National Association under in terms of financial issues and irregularities allegedly and things like that have happened over the last few years, and even with their own clubs, some of the clubs here are fan owned, some are former fan owned, some are privately owned now by multi-millionaire owners, and I think trying to I guess, delve into the insights that you give in your podcast are extremely helpful to football fans over here as well, and they're trying to relate it. And we're always anyone here in Ireland, I know, who's a dedicated League of Ireland fan is always in a internal battle with the gigantic league across the water, and so it's great to have you on, and good to get your insights into it. And it's a pleasure to meet you, albeit virtually.
Yeah, well, we've always when we start, I've been doing the show 5.5 years, and we've had 20 million downloads, so we are very proud of that. But I'll be honest, when I started off, when somebody got in contact with me and says, "I've heard you on the radio. Do you fancy doing a podcast on it?" I said, "Well, first of all, there's not enough material, and B, who the bejesus is going to listen?" Well, I was wrong, spectacularly wrong on both counts. But we've always taken the view that every fan counts equally. And it doesn't matter whether you support a global brand or your local team. It's still that. It's that heart, that connection that you have, which is part of your identity and part of your history and heritage through that football club, whether it's a League of Ireland club, whether it's a team in Belgium. We have really weird contacts that Scandinavian club owners seem to love us. So we've had we've had the Latvian Football Association come on because they listen to the show, and so on. And every fan is equal, which always amazes me when I look at social media, where people think that they're superior to somebody else because of the football club they choose to support. I think you're missing out on something there.
Yeah, and just on that point, Kieran, so the League of Ireland has thrived in the last 3-4 years, we'd say. It's from a fan perspective, numbers through the gates have never been higher. The standard of football probably has never been higher. Some of that's been driven by the fact that Damien Duff showed up at Shelbourne, and English eyes fell on him, and then of course Irish eyes fell on him, and people go, okay, if Duff's involved in this, I want to go out and I'll watch a game, and people stay going and things like that. But I think one of the aspects that doesn't get spoken much about is, as Declan said already, we're in a constant battle with the English game for eyes and fans and whatnot. And my own personal view is that I think there's a cynicism that exists now towards especially the Premier League, in terms of, I think I watched about 10 Premier League games last year. You had the Newcastle takeover about Saudi Arabia, and I just kind of went, this is a load of bollocks. Like, forget about it. This league isn't what it was. And do you get a feeling like that in England, that there's foreign fans in Asia that are obsessed with the Premier League, but you see it looks like League Two is doing better, League One is doing better, the National League, and do you feel like there's a turning off of Premier League supporters away from the Premier League back to a more grassroots level of football?
I don't see it, because rightly or wrongly, Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, they sell. I know the guys at Sky reasonably well, and when Leicester City won the Premier League in 2016, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. I thought, fantastic, well played. They said it was a disastrous year for them because they had their lowest viewing figures of the century, because people weren't interested. Whereas if it's Manchester United playing a bunch of under-8s, they'll still get. Manchester United played a bunch of under-8s in Malaysia last week, didn't they? And they lost. But you still had half a dozen journalists going across to go and watch it, which is great. So I think that there is, some people have been priced out of the game. Some people feel that the product, some things can be too good, too polished, too technical. Whereas if I go to a lower league game, and you'll see us, you'll see a fullback go straight through a winger, take him out, and then you'll be offering the manager out in the car park after the game, and the sort of the sanitized, and the Premier League, it is an amazing technical product, but it is sanitized, and sometimes you want a bit of grit and nettles. So it's great that we've got greater interest in the League of Ireland. I think that might be partly due to the fact that getting to Manchester and Liverpool in terms of getting a ticket is almost impossible, and it's getting harder and harder and harder, and the ticket prices are going up and up and up. And for one weekend in one of those cities, I live in the city of Liverpool half the year. go and visit it. It's a fantastic city. I love it, and I lived in Manchester for 40 years as well. But go and do something other than the football, because you'll get ripped off. You'll get ripped off in terms of what you pay. If you buy a ticket off social media, it will be a fake, and so on.
About our both Liverpool next year, there'll be nobody getting ripped off in Bramley-Moore Dock anyway. That will be Goodison was once the sanctuary of football in Liverpool, and now moves to the Dockland. But that's a discussion for another day, I guess. Like as you said, you've studied a lot of the leagues across Europe, across the world. From your perspective, where does the League of Ireland sit in terms of financial stability, sustainability, transparency, governance in context of everything that you've looked at and everything that you've studied over the years?
I think in terms of financial sustainability, you're still in the main reliant upon individuals to subsidise clubs. And we've already touched upon the subject. The biggest problem for the League of Ireland is the Premier League. And it's exactly the same as it's the biggest problem for the Scottish League as well. There's so many slots available at a weekend for football matches to take place. Now, if you're in Belgium, if you're in Lithuania and so on, there's enough of a gap between those countries and the Premier League so that the Belgian TV rights are worth something, as are the Lithuanian, as are the Serbian and so on. When it comes to the Irish TV rights, everybody's got Sky. There's now going to be more than ever number of matches taking place. So where is the match going to where are League of Ireland clubs going to generate money from? Because you've got three sources of revenue. You've got tickets, you've got commercial partners, and you've got broadcast. If you've got a problem getting a broadcast deal, getting viewers there, then you're not going to get the sponsors because the sponsors are after eyeballs. So you're down to your fan base as your main source of income. Perhaps a few transfer deals. For people who don't know me, I'm a Brighton fan. We've got good links to Irish clubs, and it's one of the markets that Brighton try to target quite often. So I think in terms of revenue, Ireland, the League of Ireland generates less money than you would expect it to, due to the Premier League being the cuckoo in the nest and squeezing everybody out.
Would you fix that issue, Kieran? Cork City, our own club, for example, have done their own merchandise this year, produced in Pakistan, brought in directly by the club. It's gone very well, to be fair. And obviously the profit margin is bigger because they're getting it at source and paying less and whatnot. But one thing I've always wondered on a deal like that is how come nobody else has ever done this? And is it just it's easier for a small club in a small league to do something like that directly than it is for Manchester United, Liverpool, a championship club, who would be selling millions and millions of units of merchandise year on year?
Yeah, you'd wonder why if this is such a great idea, which evidence, as Decky said, so far shows that it is, but why have we never seen Red Devil clothing or something like that, where they produce their own kits and they're selling millions and millions of jerseys? Why don't they just go directly to these factories, Kieran, that Adidas and Nike are doing? And what do you think about that idea and model?
Well, first of all, Manchester United have got no experience of global supply chain management. So you're going to have to go and recruit people.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is a risk element. Adidas lose money on the Manchester United deal. I can assure you. I know people that work in kit manufacturing, and they say all the same thing. For the deals that they have for the elite clubs, Adidas guarantee Manchester United 90 million sterling. That's well over 100 million euro a year. So if you've got that money guaranteed coming in, why take the risk of managing it yourself when you might get a wee bit more? And what happens at the end of the season if you've got 5,000 unsold shirts? Manchester United just send them back to Adidas. You deal with this as a problem. So I think there is a risk element. There's also the clubs want to concentrate on being football clubs only. the deals are so good that why take the risk of earning less money yourself? If I was guaranteed 90 million sterling a year, I'd just bank the check.
Yeah, like I guess in my time, Kieran, like when we were selling shirts, I think we were selling anywhere in the region of maybe 1,000, 1,500 jerseys. Like this, in my opinion, it's a great initiative, and the kit actually looks well. And we've had some sizing issues, is what the fans have been reporting anyway, as the main problem. The price point is decent as well. Like we actually reduced the price of the shirts from when, even in my time, when we had Adidas shirts that we sourced from them, and they were 70 quid. Now they're, I think, 60 for these Rebel Army clothing shirts. But I guess like it's not move the needle type of money to do this shift. And as Decky was, just stating there when you were saying like football clubs should focus on football, I think that's where I guess, and now we find ourselves in the relegation spots in the league. Fans do look at all these things and say, why are you concentrating on this commercial activity and putting your brain power into that when we're dwindling at the bottom of the table and at risk of becoming a yo-yo club? And as Decky alluded to earlier, like it's that balance between success off the pitch and on the pitch, and how do you find it, I guess.
Yes. And as we as we all know from experience, that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. If all those fans who will have said on the Cork City message boards and in social media, it's a really good idea that you're selling your own shit, you get relegated. So why are they spending all their time doing this? So you cannot win. But I mean, I think in terms of, it is great to see the progress. I think that there's things that we are seeing initiatives. So, I'm a big Fontaines fan. So I've got a Bohemian shirt simply because it's got Fontaines.
Don't show us it, please. We'll have to turn the video off for anyone who's watching live.
That is why I'm not wearing a Blondie shirt. But, I'm a music fan first and a football fan second. But I'm going to see them in a few weeks, and I'll be wearing that shirt. And people will be, and I know when I've worn it before, what club is it, and so on and so forth. So it is interesting that moving out of your comfort zone as football clubs can be beneficial. There's no doubt about that.
Bohemians there now, who you've mentioned, they're a fully fan-owned club, but they are a juggernaut in terms of merchandise and promoting themselves and what they do. They had the Bob Marley jersey, which they got pinged for on not being allowed to do it by the Bob Marley estate, sorted that, and then made massive money from it. They have the DC Fontaines one now. They do the Palestine stuff. Greta Thunberg was pictured yesterday on her flotilla wearing that Bose DC Fontaines jersey. Wow. So automatically you go, people are going to see that. That's another 5,000 jerseys sold for Bose just off that picture alone. So while they're a fan-owned club, they are this behemoth of a club with an ability to move merchandise that nobody else in this country comes anywhere near. Yeah, it's a bit like St. Pauli in Germany. Very much so.
So positioning yourself as being anti-establishment will pick you up, but you can't have 20 anti-establishment football clubs by definition.
So they haven't won a trophy in 17 years or something. That's the big issue.
And look, they got the piss taken when, what did they lose the cup final last year? And, again, fans went after them. We've got more jerseys than trophies in the last 17 years. And look, the prize money they probably would have gotten as, from winning those competitions would pale in comparison to the sales of those shirts, I suppose. But then again, look, as we say on this podcast regularly, Kieran, like, when it comes to things like that, nice jerseys, they're the little decorations on the Christmas tree ultimately, but the star at the top is winning games and winning trophies, I feel like. So,
creating memories. Yeah.
Like we said there, Kieran, Bose are fan-owned. Cork City, as an example, are privately owned. Shamrock Rovers, who are probably the most successful team in the country at the moment, are a hybrid model. They're 50% owned by the fan base, 25% by Dermot Desmond, and I said Dermot Usher, who's our owner, by Dermot Desmond, and 25% by the guy who owns Pepper Finance, and he's down in Australia, Ray Wilson, sorry. So there's different variations of the ownership model. In your head, is there a clearly best, in inverted commas, type of ownership model for for clubs as a whole, and maybe then in our league, which is a small league on the outskirts of European football, would there be what would you describe as a best ownership type model for League of Ireland clubs?
In my view, I'm not trying to persuade people to buy a book, but I've written a book about football finances and ownership models and so on. In my view, the best type of owner is what I describe as a benevolent dictator, i.e., one person making the decisions for the benefit of the football club rather than the benefit of their ego. If you look what's happening at Manchester United, you've got it's a vanity project for a Chelsea season ticket holding, Monaco-based Isle of Man investment vehicle who thinks he knows everything about football. Well, he doesn't, and you just got to see how his arse smacked over the course of the last 18 months with that. So you want somebody who is a genuine fan, because I think they can read that they can read the room that much better. I think they're also more likely to be given greater time and more forgiveness by the fan base themselves, because we all say that if we win the lotto, we're going to buy our football club, and we've all had that conversation with ourselves, not necessarily with our wives, but we've certainly had that conversation with ourselves, and you would try to do the right thing, and the benefit of that is that you can make decisions quicker. I love the idea of a fan-owned club, but look at what happened at Wrexham. They were fan-owned. What the fans did was absolutely magnificent, but what the fans were doing, the fans were operating a life support machine, and that was it. When it wasn't recuperation, it wasn't getting people back to walking, it wasn't getting people back to being able to function normally. It was a life support machine, and God bless every single Wrexham fan who got involved with it. Absolutely brilliant. Then Rob and Ryan came in, and we've seen the transformation there. If you take a look at Portsmouth, they were a fan-owned club. They're now owned by Michael Eisner, the ex-head of Disney. They've gone up a couple of divisions. So if you are a fan-owned club, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. That sense of community is something to be applauded. But let's say there's a chance of signing a new centre forward. He's going to cost us €50,000. Where's that €50,000 going to come from? Because you can only have so many bucket campaigns or stick in a tenner campaigns because people get football donation fatigue very, very quickly. So therefore, if you are fan owned, it does create a natural ceiling in terms of the ability of the club to compete, depending on where you're based. Now, I think in the League of Ireland, it might be slightly more forgiving than what we've got on this side of the Irish Sea, but it's still an issue. If you get somebody rich coming in to buy an LOI club, then they can accelerate the success. And if that success then results in them getting into Europe, the financial rewards of even one season in the Europa Conference, compared to what the money you're generating in the LOI, that's my concern. Because if you've got a €3 million advantage where the average revenues are, in what little research I've done, it's probably doubling the revenues for some clubs easily. Yeah. Then the trouble is that rolls over. And if you qualify for Europe twice, then there's a danger for the next 10 seasons. You end up in a position similar to that what we've got in Wales, where Total Network Solutions, I don't know who's going to ever be able to take to compete with them.
Yeah, and we had that benevolent dictator at one stage, and what I would argue, Kieran, was probably our most successful period as a club, and where we potentially looked to push on and take over. His name was Brian Lennox, exactly as you described there. He was a single owner, owned a chip shop and a laundrette in the city. His family were steeped in Cork soccer, football for generations, and his father played for Cork Hibs and that kind of thing. So like we had that, and I think that's what fans have been striving for ever since. Like, he was from Cork, and I think he got forgiveness from supporters as well when times were tough too. And look, I guess now with our current ownership, like the majority owner of the club, Dermot Usher, is from Dublin. He does have a minority shareholder of the club as well, who is from Cork. But look, I think he probably, to be fair, and I'm sure he'd probably agree, he doesn't get as much patience or forgiveness from the club, just because he's not from the area and he hasn't grown up as a Cork City fan, or grew up in the city. And look, that's something he's swimming against the tide with, I suppose.
Absolutely.
In terms of like one of Dermot's stated objectives after he bought the club was to make the club financially self-sustainable, Kieran. And it's something I've rallied against massively because I just don't see how it's doable, especially in the short term. As you said, if you make Europe for 2 seasons, maybe long term it is. But short term, I don't see it. Okay, we do our own kit. We have an events company linked to the club that are running, very successful, a night in Dublin, a night in Cork Opera House for the Italian 90 team on the 30th anniversary, 35th anniversary there lately, running events like that, generating money. Brilliant. But in terms of football finance, self-sustainability has to be the hardest thing for any club anywhere in the world to achieve. And I just don't see it as a possibility in the first 5 or even 10 years maybe of owning a League of Ireland club. Because the second you get into Europe, the agents come looking for bonuses and they look for more money for the players. So everything is just gets more expensive. Would you have any thoughts on that whole self-sustainability aspect of football finance?
Yeah, it's a bit like me wanting to get into the same pair of jeans I could get into when I was 21. It's an honourable proposition, but the reality is that there's little chance of it ever taking place. So the reason why I say that is football doesn't actually have a problem generating money. Football is a problem spending money, and I think you alluded it to there, Decky, in the sense that if we take a history of the Premier League, the revenues of the Premier League since it started have increased by 2,995%. That's 20 times faster than the rate of inflation in England. Absolutely amazing until you look at the wages, and the wages have gone up by 4,000%. So clubs can't control costs. And I don't know whether you saw the documentary series Sunderland Till I Die, because they had the club owner who had come in and says, I'm all about business. I'm going to make Sunderland a sustainable football club. And he was then in the transfer window in January, and Sunderland had a good chance of getting into the playoffs. And the manager says, I want to sign Will Grigg, but I don't want to pay more than £1 million for him. And the owner says, leave it with me. I'm a professional. And then over the course, and how he allowed himself to have no editorial control over what was broadcast is beyond me. He then got his trousers taken down and absolutely spanked, in the sense that he ended up paying £3 million for Will Grigg. The poor lad came in. There was all of this pressure, the most expensive player in the history of the third tier of English football, and he struggled. And that's what you see time and time again. I'm quite fortunate that I get to have conversations with club owners and executives, and the common thing that they say is that we've got a friend for every pound, for every euro, for every dollar that the owner has. And there are sharks, and then there are mega sharks, and then there are whale sharks, in terms of everybody thinks that because you're connected to a football club, you're simply there to be financially rinsed. And I think that's the problem. If you want a sustainable football club, fine, but will the fans accept being second or third bottom of the table every season? And then you've got that paradoxical position. I'm not going to pay to watch that shite. And then the money starts going down, and the finances deteriorate further.
And even I could probably echo what you're saying there, Kieran, in terms of the rinsed situation, because I guess like when I was the chairman of Cork City, and we dealt with local commercial partners, suppliers of various things, security companies, kit suppliers, that kind of stuff. They gave us so much goodwill. Like if I phoned up someone and said, that invoice that we sent you that didn't need to be paid for 30 days, any chance you can pay it within a week and a half because we're a bit tight? And they would. And, you would have done. But I think since the clubs moved to private ownership, I've heard things. I'm sure suppliers and commercial partners were probably like maybe pulled away a little bit and said, I was happy enough giving sponsorship and support to a fan-run entity that's a not-for-profit, and I knew the guys on the board, and they weren't making a penny. If anything, it was costing us time and money. I think it's just a difficult situation, and as you said, soon as a private owner who is seen to have plenty of money and it's well documented how much money they have, it's like, how much can we pull from this guy? And that's the unfortunate piece of it, because we all do believe that Dermot's heart is in the right place, but I think maybe there's just a little bit of that. He's new to football administration as well, and naivety in the sense of what you just described. Like, there is that aspect of, how much can we just rinse from this guy? He's got plenty of money, and, it's unfortunate, but I'm glad you said it, because it's the elephant in the room, really, that we don't talk about often enough.
Is self-sustainability, Kieran, across the globe? Now, I'm not talking about one specific club and one specific league in Ireland, but is self-sustainability kind of a code word for, I don't want to pay for it myself, I want everybody else to pay for it?
Yeah. Look, we want better roads, good education for our kids, and if we feel a bit poorly, we can go and see a doctor immediately, or my mum can go to hospital. But I want somebody else to pay for it. So it's I think it's reflective of a much broader issue in society. We want to be associated with a successful football club, but at the same time, if they put up a price of a cuppa by 10 cents, then I'm going to be kicking off. And that's a much broader paradox when it comes to the world of finance, because football is unique. If my supermarket starts charging 20% more than everybody else, I'll go elsewhere. Football club, you can't go elsewhere because it's there. It's part of you. So what do? Well, you use public vehicles such as social media and getting in touch with the local newspaper and so on to create aggravation, and sometimes that can work fantastically well. I think at wasn't it Spurs and Manchester City, they've both had to back down in terms of ticket price increases because the fans have organised themselves. So yeah, the finances of football make no sense whatsoever, which further enhances further increases the level of interest in the game. I've just been on the radio in the UK because Rangers have been taken over, and I said, well, let's take a look at the actual numbers. Rangers has got the same wage bill as Celtic, has got the same investment in players in terms of transfer fees as Celtic, but it's far behind on the pitch. So it's nothing to do with the money being spent. It's how smart is the money being spent. And there's a really good book by a guy called Dr. Ian Graham, who is the former head of research at Liverpool. And if you read it, you realise that the solution that we all have to the problem of our football club, which is spending somebody else's money on a 22-year-old guy from Croatia who you've only seen in a 30-second YouTube reel, well, that doesn't actually work. The transfer market is one of the biggest cons in football, that you're simply by spending money, you solve problems.
And just ask, you said you've just been on, I was listening to you on TalkSport before you joined us here. How much of a fall is it from Jim White and Simon Jordan to the two of us clones there?
Step up, boys. This is a step up. I'm dealing with authentic football fans here.
Kieran, I came across your overlap interview as well with Jamie Carragher and Paul Scholes, and you've definitely upgraded from Carragher to myself anyway. The guy that jumps and hops between clubs and loyalties and all that. Look, I'm a one club man, so yeah, the upgrade is.
You may have figured out at this stage, Kieran, that Declan doesn't lack ego anyway. That's one thing for sure,
As I say to the lads, Kieran, all the time, to be a chairman of a football club, you have to have some element of bravado
and a very thick skin.
Indeed, yeah, exactly.
That's true. I heard you on this week's Price of Football, and we leave you go after this, Kieran, I think. You were talking about the World Cup, the next World Cup in Canada, Mexico, the USA, and FIFA's move towards a dynamic pricing model. And it just got me thinking about, in general in football finance, kind of like, what trends do you see emerging in football finance? And, especially for leagues like the League of Ireland, smaller leagues, what's coming down the line, and is there stuff that you think is coming and that clubs need to be very, very wary of this particular its that might be popping its head up in the next few years?
Yeah. What makes us go to football matches? It's, as my wife says, you go to the same pub with the same blokes talking the same shite that you've been doing for the last 45 years, 50 years. And it's really good for you. So football's a shared experience, and football's all about creating memories. I can't speak on behalf of you, but I know many football fans have had this conversation. If I look at the top 10 moments of my life, 7 of them involve football. It doesn't mean, the day I got married was great and the birth of my 2 kids was great. And as I say to my wife, she's number 4. She should be, it could have been far, far worse. But
it's my wedding anniversary actually tomorrow, Kieran, and it's a bank holiday today. And my wife was very disappointed to tell her that, look, anyway, we'll do our thing later on today, but I'm interviewing Kieran Maguire for TOTAP, so we'll have to park. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's what's unique to us, but we've also got to accept that we are legacy fans. So we are gentlemen of a certain age. So trying to work out how the game is going to be consumed in the future, kids are being priced out of football. So I think for the League of Ireland, this is where you can make a difference. Make it accessible, make it engaging, make sure that the lads who are wearing the shirts do sit for autographs and selfies after the match, because you've got no idea just how much that means to an 8 or a 9-year-old. And I think sort of drumming that into them, that you're not doing this because the club wants you to, you're doing it because it's actually in your interest as a professional athlete. My fear is, and I don't see this as being an issue of the League of Ireland in presently, but if the growth continues, or what are you going to do with the fact that season ticket holders are being replaced by tourist fans, that people of my age group, and say I'm in my 60s, we're bed blockers as far as football clubs are concerned, because they want to replace. Look, I'm a Brighton fan, so I can assure you, my club wants to replace me with a 22-year-old young lady from Tokyo who's going to get the home shirt, the away shirt, and the third shirt with Matoma on the back of it. Is going to buy the program, is because I go to the pub with my mates. I don't. I might have a cup of tea or a pie, but I don't spend money. I'm a bit old for football shirts, so apart from the money they're getting from a season ticket, they're not really yielding, and this is going to be an issue. The other fear for me is that how is the League of Ireland? I mentioned the cuckoo in the nest in the Premier League. Well, we're getting something similar with the expansion of UEFA's competitions and FIFA's competitions. When's there going to be downtime for you to be able to watch League of Ireland games? Because there's so much football to be consumed on the television. And with the League of Ireland TV deal being not worth very much, you've got to charge people a fair price for a match day ticket. Well, if it's Barcelona versus Inter on the same evening as Cork City are playing, not Cove Rangers because they're not good enough. Did you say the right thing?
Cove Ramblers.
Cove Ramblers, sorry.
Cove Rangers will be a nice nickname we'll give them now for the rest of the season. Great. Well done, Kieran. You've christened them a brand new nickname. Fantastic. But I think, as you said, Kieran, I think our supporters, I've seen comments, and look, we read the discussion forums and social medias, but as you just described there, our club has had events, and as Decky said, look, they've been successful. In Italia 98 up in Dublin, the last thing a Cork City fan wants to do is head up to Dublin. We've had a golf event in the K Club in County Kildare, they're all to. No, we did do. We have had events in Cork as well, of course, and things like that. But it's just when you see these things that your club is doing, you're the fan that you described there yourself. When you see these events advertised, you're kind of thinking like, what's this got to do with Cork City and me and Cork and the community and look, and then
it's business.
Yeah.
And as football transitions away from being opera for the working classes, and I'm not getting on a political soapbox here, but I come from working class Irish migrant family who my mum and dad, their families moved to London. I grew up in an Irish part of town, South London, and that's what you did, because you went to the pub at lunchtime, you went to the football match, and you went to the pub afterwards. That is being replaced, and trying to work out what's going to come through in terms of, will kids be watching football with these goggles? I've got one of these virtual reality headsets. They are absolutely sensational. And if I can watch Inter versus Barcelona on a Wednesday night on one of these sets of goggles, and it feels like I'm there, it just makes it so much more difficult.
Yeah, it's like, to be fair to the club, and I should just say, like, the stuff in Dublin, the Italian 90, like the club will say, and I think they're right, that's not aimed at Cork City supporters, that's aimed at Irish supporters in Dublin who are then putting money into the Cork City coffers. The same with the golf event, as much and all as we mock them and give out about them on this podcast from time to time. But that should be said. Kieran, I know I said I was going to let you go, but I'm murder for this. I never leave anybody go. So just tell me when you have to go. Very quickly, women's football. I know it's not a huge, but I mean, it's a massive loss leader. It has to be a massive loss leader. We've seen the Blackburn Rovers situation in England, which is actually something we said on Last Damas 3 weeks ago, and nobody in England would ever listen to Last Damas, which is the Irish women's football pod we do. But I did know that Blackburn Rovers were pulling their club at that stage because somebody in England who had tried to loan a player from them and was told by Blackburn, don't worry about it, we're packing it all in, and had come back and told me. So obviously there's a women's national league here. It's massively underfunded. Nobody goes to the games. It's just gets no backing. The Irish women's team play in Cork tomorrow night against Slovenia, Tuesday night. I think there'll be less than 3,000 people there. It's in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, which is the GA stadium, which, fully seated, I think is 21,000. There'll be 3,000 there, I think. It just looks like a shit show, to be honest with you, for the want of a better phraseology. It's growing in England, it's booming, but the finances of women's football must be in a whole lot of a worse state than the finances of men's football have ever been in.
Yeah, all of the women's team are losing money in England. Those losses are excluded from the cost control rules. So you are allowed. I think the football authorities have been quite smart. They are hoping that there will be increased interest and growth, but attendances this season are down about 8 to 9% on 23-24. You've got Chelsea being valued at €300 million for Chelsea's women's team. Okay, people go, okay, must be doing really well. Take that. I wouldn't say take it with a pinch of salt. I'd say go in a bath full of salt, because this is a club that on occasions this season is getting crowds of 2,500. Well, how can it be worth €300 million on that? And it loses money left, right, and centre. I'm aware of what Chelsea pay to their top players. I mean, they're on 400, 500,000 euro.
On that, Kieran, and I hope this might be the last question. And sorry, Dec, for butting in and asking the questions. How would you value Cork City FC? And just to give you a bit of background as well, in terms of our club, we don't own the stadium that we play in every second Friday. It's owned by the Munster Football Association, which are a subsidiary of the FAI, etc. Our training ground is owned by a property developer, and there's always this ongoing talk that it's going to be turned into offices and apartments and this and that. So we have no full confirmed stable home as a club, either for our professional games or from a training capacity. So that's all in terms of assets. We have the player contracts, I suppose, the club badge, the history. Like, how would you value a club like ours?
Well, it is a trophy asset model that you have to apply, because when I'm valuing normal businesses, you look at the cash flow that they generate. Okay, Cork City doesn't generate. Cork City is a cash consumer, not a cash generator. So the cash valuation model doesn't work. You then try to perhaps, a bit like if you're buying a house, you compare it to how much next door's house is going. Well, there's not that many transactions in Irish football, and they're all a bit private. So what we are doing at present, this side of the pond, is we say how much cash is the club generating, and then I'm multiplying that by a number. And for most lower league clubs, depending on it depends whether I'm on the buy side or the sell side of the deal. I'm looking normally at somewhere between 1.5 and 2 times revenue. So, Cork City's revenue, what, 4-5 million euro?
I'd say slightly under. Yeah.
Okay.
You're probably talking more to kind of 2.5 to 3, I would say, just from my historical knowledge. But yeah, it's certainly from a profitability perspective, Kieran, it's a loss leader every year. Like, the private ownership is pumping in a couple of 100,000, I'd say, a year at this stage. Definitely the last 2 or 3 seasons. But look,
so it then becomes a case of what are the non-financial benefits of being the owner. You get the kudos.
Not a lot at the moment. Not a lot of kudos, I tell you that.
So it's, there's a case for saying, sell it for €1 and the new owner takes over. I don't know if there are any debts, but if the debts are substantial, you sell it for €1 and somebody else has to go and pay the tax authorities and somebody else to go and pay the COVID loans if you've still got some available and so on. You might be able to extract a bit more, but there's no proper value in football clubs, but then there's no proper value in a Picasso. It's just a painting. It doesn't do anything apart from look.
We're far from a Picasso, no, I'll tell you that much anyway. But yeah, we're delving more into on the pitch stuff, which we'll save for a regular podcast. But yeah. Thanks, Kieran.
Yeah. So, you won't know this, Kieran, but that's actually what we did as the fans group. We sold it for €1. You hit the nail on the head and take on the debt, and that's where the club went at the time. Guys, I guess that's it. Declan, unless there's anything else from yourself.
No, just look, absolute pleasure to meet you, Kieran. Thank you so much for dedicating your time. As you just jumped from TalkSport, huge media outlet, over to us, another huge media outlet in Ireland. So I'm just saying, I'm more talking about the geographical jump that you just made is impressive. But look, really appreciate you coming on, and thanks so much for your time. I hope you'll maybe come on again sometime in the future. Maybe see how our season plays out, and I'll
talk you through your European campaign.
Yeah.
But you've got to believe. And that's one of the things that faith. We know it's blind faith at times. I once wrote to Taylor Swift asking her for a date. She didn't reply, so she's not said no. It's that type of blind faith that we all have. And I support Brighton Football Club, and we've been shite for most of the time. But last year, I went to Rome, I went to Athens, I went to Amsterdam, and I went to Marseille. Jesus Christ, it was a great time. And they can never take that away from me. So keep that belief.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Liam Carney's goal in Malmo, John O'Flynn at the cross against is at Alkmaar. It's just those memories. And you said it earlier, football is about memories. It's about memories and hope. And, everybody thinks, oh, you don't like the owner, you give him a hard time. That's not it. You want your club to be the best that it can be. And yes, you put pressure on to try and achieve that. But the only other side of it is the old saying, it's the hope that kills you, Kieran, so.
But it's the hope that keeps us going. It's the hope. It's the hope that keeps us surviving from Monday to Friday, because we've got Saturday and we've got another bit of hope to look forward to. Never forget how important that is.
So to sign off, Kieran, we usually say adios, playing off our Amigos title. So if you know any Spanish by any means, just feel free to throw anything at all in there. And
struggling.
Thought I'd put you on the spot.
Yeah, guys, listen, Huge thanks to Kieran Maguire for joining us. Hopefully, he will come back at some stage in the future. But until then, guys, thanks for listening. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Muchas gracias. Adios.